Thanks for joining us tonight on another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm your host for another fabulous little half hour where we are going to talk all things motorsports, because we had a fairly decent amount of racing going on this weekend. It was Easter weekend, and as a result, NASCAR took a week off for the Cup Series, but the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the Craftsman Truck Series were both in action last weekend in Rockingham. And then we also had Super Formula kick off its 2026 campaign with a doubleheader in Motegi. But in addition to all that, we had plenty of news drop last weekend and also so far this week that we've got to get to, so you won't want to miss a single moment during this week's episode. So before we go ahead and jump into the news and notes of Formula One, be sure, if you like the show, to go ahead and give me a follow on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS33. And then make sure you have WTHR Plus installed on your smart TV so that you can watch brand new episodes of The Racing Report each and every week. Also, make sure you're subscribed to WTHR on YouTube, so if you like to watch The Racing Report that way, you get notified whenever a new episode is uploaded. So let's go ahead now and jump right on into the news and notes of Formula One. We've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. What's going on with Audi? What's going on with Aston Martin? And we got a little bit more insight into that because Audi team boss Mattia Binotto says that the team will not directly be replacing former team principal Jonathan Wheatley with a new team principal, but instead Binotto said he will continue in his leadership role and that he is looking for someone to quote unquote support him during race weekend. So a little bit of a different approach here for Audi on how they're going to run the team, specifically from a leadership standpoint. But Mattia Binotto basically saying he's going to take over from now, but would like someone to support him during race days, as he'll primarily be working with a lot of the engineering staff, might even be away back at the team's home base. So a lot going on into this, and we still don't really know when Jonathan Wheatley will officially take over the team principal for Aston Martin, as that's still the heavy rumor. But as we talked about last week, still no timetable for when he is expected to start that job. Of course, Formula One was supposed to have a race this weekend in Bahrain, but of course that was canceled a couple of weeks ago, as well as the scheduled race in Saudi Arabia. So right now we're looking at a long Formula One hiatus as we hopefully move on into the month of May and look forward to more Formula One. And as we talk about that, speaking of in the month of May, the first Formula One race back after this impromptu spring break is going to be held at the Miami Grand Prix. Now, during that event, officials with Buenos Aires, Argentina, are expected to meet with Liberty Media during that Grand Prix weekend because the Autodromo Oscar y Juan Galvez, which was the most recent home to the Argentinian Grand Prix, is undergoing renovations in anticipation to host a MotoGP round next year. Now, these renovations are expected to be completed by December, and Argentine officials are hoping to land an F1 date by 2027 if a calendar slot opens up. However, they also are open to potentially bidding on a 2028 calendar date. So we could be seeing a return to Argentina for Formula One on the heels of MotoGP's return, but a lot of that is going to probably not be found out how likely that is until the Miami Grand Prix weekend, when these officials from Buenos Aires go down and talk with Liberty Media and show them the progress on the track, how the renovations and the revitalization of that area is going, and maybe we'll have an answer. Maybe we'll see an Argentinian Formula One Grand Prix back on the calendar by as soon as 2028 if all goes well. So, and in addition to that, we also have more track news to discuss. It's not always that we get to talk about new potential F1 tracks, but new images have been revealed showing the progress of Saudi Arabia's new Qiddiya Speed Park Track. Qiddiya Speed Park Track. That is a very interesting name for a racetrack, but I digress. And that is set to host the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix beginning in 2028. Now, if you've seen the renderings from this track, you know that it kind of looks like it's straight out of Mario Kart. Almost looks like they were trying to rip off Rainbow Road in a bit. But you have to see this Instagram video that they posted, and you can kind of see how this construction is going, especially for the first turn, which is going to be a 230-foot first corner. So it's going to go up 230 feet, kind of like a highway on-ramp almost. And that'll be the first turn. And in addition to that, you can kind of see just how big these support structures are going to need to be, because that first turn is also going to be located above a concert venue. So a lot of crazy new ideas going on. Of course, it was designed by Herman Tilke, and it's supposed to be one of the longest Formula One tracks on the circuit. And in general, that first corner is going to be known as the Blade, if you can believe it. But just some very interesting news there. Some of how the circuit is coming together is definitely looking very interesting, and I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like as it continues and after the Blade gets finished by construction. Now let's turn our attention to some Formula One news regarding Red Bull. Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies said on a podcast that Yuki Tsunoda deserves to be on the Formula One grid, but said that he wished Red Bull had a place for him behind the wheel. So unfortunately, Laurent Mekies believes in Yuki Tsunoda's abilities behind the wheel, and I think most people who've watched Formula One and watched his performance in Formula 2 would probably agree with that. But right now, unfortunately, he's expressing his disappointment that they only have two cars per team, and as much as he would maybe like to have Yuki back, he mentioned just how impressive Isaac Hadjar has been so far through the first 3 races with Red Bull, and you kind of have to admit that he is a little bit better than Tsunoda, but still, Mekies saying that he'd like to see Tsunoda on the grid. Now, as we talk about further, as we move to our final Formula One piece of news today, McLaren says that it will be giving reigning Formula 2 champion and current reserve driver Leonardo Fornoli more F1 tests at a, quote, variety of different circuits. So congratulations to him getting more opportunities to run a McLaren Formula One car. And on that note, let's go ahead now and move into the world of IndyCar. Not a lot of news this week. Obviously, we still have another week before the series returns at Long Beach. But Doug Boles has elaborated, apparently, on previous comments that indicated that IndyCar was open to expanding the schedule in the future. Now, IndyCar had 17 races scheduled for 2026, added an 18th with the Washington, D.C. event, and now Racer is reporting that Boles has doubled down on his statement that IndyCar could add additional races as long as the series continues to grow in popularity and some of these events continue to sell out and perform very well with tickets and on ratings. And so he wants to make sure that any new race that gets added is a unique and big major event. So he adds that he wanted to again maintain an even distribution of ovals, street tracks, and road courses. So he wants a third of each. 1/3 of the schedule to be ovals, 1/3 of the schedule to be street races, and the final third to be road courses. That is Doug Boles' goal. Obviously, we kind of have that right now, though Milwaukee being a doubleheader kind of, I don't think counts, really. In my opinion, I don't think it really counts. I think they do need at least one more oval. I don't know what that oval would be. Obviously, would I like to see them do maybe a doubleheader with NASCAR, just like they did at Phoenix, do it again at Richmond? I would like to see that. I think that would be very likely. But again, still up in the air on what ends up happening. But just pretty much nothing really new in this Racer article, but still it's more Doug Boles doubling down on what he said not long ago regarding the future of the IndyCar schedule. And now, completely unrelated, but still related to IndyCar, Will Power had a very interesting moment with his father, because his father, Bob, was apparently unharmed when he was reportedly carjacked and briefly held at gunpoint in his hometown of Toowoomba, Australia. Now, the 39-year-old male suspect was charged with 15 crimes, according to local media, following his arrest, but thankfully, Bob Power is A-okay, but just probably a little bit shaken up after holding off a carjacker at gunpoint. Very scary situation. Very glad that he is doing okay. And now, as we talk about that, let's move on into the world of Formula E before we take our first break of the show. Sophia Flörsch has joined Opel as its test and development driver beginning next season. Well, beginning now, but for next season, as Opel is scheduled to take over for the DS branding and DS will be gone from Formula E, and it will be known as Opel going forward. And she's supposed to debut the Opel's Gen 4 Challenger coming up here in a couple of weeks. But good for her. If you're not familiar with Sophia Flörsch, she's been racing in a lot of junior categories throughout Europe. She's a 25-year-old German driver. She briefly raced in Indy Next last year. She ran the St. Petersburg race for HMD before getting released due to budget constraints. So some good news for fans of Sophia Flörsch, as she will be the test and reserve driver for Opel beginning now and for next season in Formula E. But that is it for the open wheel news of the week. When we take our first break, we're going to come back and we're going to discuss some of the news of supercars, because we had a shocking development just after we finished recording last week that we got to get to. And it's kind of surprising if you're not in the know specifically. So more Racing Report coming up after these messages. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. We really appreciate it. Now it's time to go ahead and talk about some of the enclosed wheels, not open wheel, the sports cars, touring cars, NASCAR style news. We'll begin, as always, with supercars. And this is what we teased before we took a break, because after we recorded last week's show, we learned that Supercars CEO James Warburton has stepped down from his position effective immediately. So last week, April 2nd, James Warburton stepped down from his position of CEO of Supercars, and he is now going to be replaced by Barclay Nettlefold, the current chairman of Racing Australia Consolidated Enterprises, which is the organization that owns Supercars. Now, Supercars, in a statement, said that Warburton's departure was reached by mutual agreement. So a lot of unknowns still going on right now is exactly why James Warburton abruptly stepped down from his position as CEO of Supercars. But as soon as we get any updates to that news, we will be sure to bring it to you right here on the Racing Report. But now let's talk about the next piece of Supercars news, because they are back in action this weekend in New Zealand at Taupo. And Supercars says that Sunday's race in Taupo will be reduced from 61 to 60 laps, shortening the race by about 3.3 kilometers, and that's being done in an apparent effort to prevent a fuel mileage race at the end. Surprisingly, this was not done due to the ongoing fuel crisis in Australia that we talked about last week. That was very surprising to me. I fully expected when I read that headline for that to have been related, but no, in fact, Supercars is saying, no, we actually just don't want these drivers to be in a fuel mileage situation. We want them to race hard to the end. They want them to be able to race without any issues, race without any need to pull back the reins and be able to go flat out towards the end and hopefully set up for a fun shootout, depending on how the race falls together. And that's actually very interesting, because now we're going to move on into the world of NASCAR news. And this is a perfect segue, because ironically, surprisingly, NASCAR has done basically the exact same thing that Supercars just did. NASCAR says that it is shortening the stages at Talladega, which is coming up here in a couple of weeks, at least for the Cup Series. They're shortening the Cup Series race stages at Talladega in an attempt to combat fuel-saving strategies. As if you've watched any super speedway race in NASCAR over the last couple of seasons, you know that one of the most frustrating things is these drivers running around basically half throttle. It looks visually cool to see them running 3 and 4 wide, but these drivers in reality are just fuel saving. They're riding around, they're using the draft in order to try and meet a fuel number, and fans are not really thrilled about that, and neither is NASCAR. So, as a result, in a couple of weeks at Talladega, the opening stage for the Cup race is expected to be 100 laps, at least 100 laps, give or take. Obviously, the 500-miler at Talladega, I believe, usually is about 188 laps. But the final two stages are expected to be about 50 laps each. So it's going to be a longer first stage and shorter second and final stages. And that's basically done so that the teams aren't fuel saving throughout the majority of the race. And that's what NASCAR is trying to prevent. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. especially when we're getting to Talladega in just a couple of weeks. And in addition to that announcement, NASCAR also added that they are apparently returning preseason Thunder. We're going to have preseason Thunder again for the first time since, I think, like 2013 or 14, back next year in January at Daytona. Now, NASCAR says that they are bringing back preseason Thunder specifically to see if they can make any technical changes on these cars to prevent these fuel strategy races on super speedways. Good luck to them. I'm just glad we get to see preseason Thunder back again. I always thought that that was a great way to get excited for the upcoming NASCAR season, kind of see new drivers in new places before we actually get to practice at Daytona. Some people are skeptical, saying, why does it matter? Why nobody cared about this? Well, I disagree. I cared about it. I enjoyed it. I watched it every year. So I'm looking forward to seeing it coming back. Now, more in the NASCAR news. Let's talk about this. This was probably one of the biggest points of discussion throughout this weekend and this week. Cleetus McFarland. He has not been approved to race the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Talladega. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago when he announced that he was going to be racing for RCR at Rockingham. Well, he didn't exactly have the best race at Rockingham. Definitely had an eventful race, but did finish all the laps. I guess he was 6 laps down, but he did finish the race. He did come home and I guess didn't tear it up too much. But NASCAR has seen that and said, you know what? We just don't think you're ready to run Talladega yet. But they did approve him to run, of course, the entire ARCA schedule. So if he wants to run Talladega in ARCA, he's absolutely free to. But until then, he's only so far approved to race short tracks in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. So definitely a big update there. It was disappointing for Cleetus fans, but I think really it was for the best. I think that what I saw at Rockingham was in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series was not necessarily what I expected, and it's not really indicative of somebody who should probably be out there for his second O'Reilly Auto Parts Series start coming at Talladega. Though I will give him credit, he did look great in the ARCA race. He did finish 4th in the ARCA race, kept his nose clean, kept the car out of the wall, did everything he needed to do, but ultimately it was just not the same kind of deal in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. So Cleetus McFarland not approved to run Talladega. We'll have to see what he does and maybe if he adjusts his schedule with RCR in the coming weeks. Now, hey, we talked about this. The All-Star race is coming up here in about a month's time, and Dover says it is going to open a All-Star Village when it hosts the All-Star race, and it will be adjacent to the track's fan zone in the grassy area formerly known as the Grove. It will be open throughout the race weekend and feature live entertainment, interactive attractions, and NASCAR-themed displays. So kind of taking a page out of how other cities host All-Star games, like the MLB All-Star Game, the NBA All-Star Game, the NHL All-Star Game, et cetera, et cetera. Dover's going to take a piece out of that and kind of try and apply it to NASCAR. I'm very curious to see how this works. If you're going to Dover next month, please let me know. I want to see what that All-Star Village is going to look like. In driver news, Logan Bearden is going to drive for Young's Motorsports in 3 O'Reilly Auto Parts Series races coming up this year, and they're all going to be in the state of Tennessee because his sponsor, T3 Vodka, is based out of Knoxville. So he's going to race that number 42 Young's machine this weekend in Bristol. He's going to race it again at Nashville and then again Bristol again when we get there in September. Finally, in the world of NASCAR, Carson Ferguson, the runner-up in Kaulig's Race for the Seat competition, is going to drive at Bristol this weekend in the number 25 free agent Ram truck. So congratulations to him. He might have lost out on the number 14 ride that was won by Minnie Terrell. So now Connor Ferguson, at the very least, getting an opportunity to go out there and run a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, and that'll be this Friday at Bristol. All that said, we're going to go ahead and take our second and final break of the show. But when we come back, we're going to recap all of the races that happened last weekend. Not very many, but a lot of storylines to get discussed. And then we're also going to preview some of the races that are coming up this weekend. Not a lot of major races, but a lot of great grassroots racing to be watched this weekend, especially if you're a subscriber to Flow Racing. So, more Racing Report coming up after these messages. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. Thanks so much for sticking with us through that break. You know, last weekend, Rockingham, I love Rockingham. I'm so glad to see it back on the NASCAR calendar. It might not have a cup date, but man, is it fun to watch those ARCA cars, those trucks, and those O'Reilly Auto Parts Series cars running around that mile-ish oval. It's just so nice. It's so unique. It's such a different track, and it created for us a lot of fun races. But let's talk about the first one, which was held over the weekend, and that was the truck race. That was held Friday afternoon, and Corey Heim won that race over Caden Honeycutt, his teammate. So Caden Honeycutt actually plopped himself into the ride that Corey Heim had last year. Now Corey Heim's doing a couple of one-offs, select races with Tricon Garage. And it was a really fun battle between the two. It's just that the problem was they had two other teammates getting in the way. Gio Ruggiero and Tanner Gray were both catching flack on social media, admittedly also by myself, just because they didn't get out of the way when the leaders were racing for position, and it didn't look like they were racing each other to stay on the lead lap, racing each other for position. You had the two leaders battling it out for the win, and you had their two teammates kind of get in there and dictate the finish of that race. Now, of course, it was a well-done victory by Corey Heim, but I think most people, myself included, are kind of wishing that they could have seen what those two did without having to deal with lap traffic from their teammates. I think lap traffic is one thing, but when it's your teammate not getting out of the way, man, just get out of the way. Get out of the way. Let the leaders race for it. But that's the big controversy, I guess, from Rockingham in the Truck Series race. But also what's going on is with that victory, Corey Heim is now tied for the Truck Series points lead with Caden Honeycutt, despite only having run 3 out of the 5 races. So Corey Heim hasn't even started 2 of the Truck Series races this season, and he's already tied in points with his teammate. Now, obviously, since he hasn't run all the races, he's not eligible for the chase, but it has brought up an interesting scenario where what if Corey Heim was still in the top 10 in points by the time the chase began? What would happen? How would NASCAR adapt to that? Obviously, they wouldn't change the rule, but it would be quite interesting if that was something that happened. You would probably kick him out and put the 11th place driver or whatever in that spot instead. But either way, Corey Heim's just so good in the Truck Series, he doesn't even need to run all the races to be leading the point standings. But speaking of in Rockingham, it was a Toyota sweep, basically, because we had William Sawalich winning his first ever O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race this past weekend at Rockingham. Congratulations to him. It was a hard-fought victory. He did hold off teammate Brandon Jones, who finished second. And as we talked about, Cleetus McFarland did not have the best race at Rockingham. He finished 32nd, 6 laps down, which was not exactly what he probably wanted and probably did factor in to why he was denied the ability to race at Talladega. But all things considered, I think his goal was just to complete the race, just to finish the race, just not to crash, even though he tried hard to crash a couple of times. Did have an amazing save early on in the race that impressed me. I thought, hey, say what you want about the guy, but that was one heck of a save at the beginning of the race. But otherwise, another great weekend in Rockingham. Very glad that we got to watch some of those races again this weekend. But couple of races that I couldn't watch were the Super Formula races. Now, last week, I told you I thought the Super Formula races were going to be broadcast on their YouTube channel. I was horribly mistaken. That was not the case. In fact, apparently, you now have to subscribe to their proprietary app, SF Go, in order to watch any of the races in either Japanese or English, which just kind of upsets me because it's been so easy and accessible to watch Super Formula for the past 5-ish years, and now suddenly I gotta pay more money and I can't even watch it on my TV. It's only available on my phone or tablet. Sure, you can cast it, but it's just all that extra work. But either way, it was a rainy event in Motegi. I wish I could have seen it, but I had to rely on some of the highlights. It was a very rainy event, but Kakunoshin Ota won both races, came right out, won both races, and has already got a 20-point advantage in the point standings after just the first race. Hey man, gotta go for... Not a bad way to start out the season. Not a bad way. Super Formula coming back, though, of course, in a couple of weeks later on. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the races that are indeed coming up this weekend. We've got a lot of grassroots races we're going to talk about. We don't usually feature these grassroots races, but we've got a lot of them on the schedule this week, and I want to talk about them. But before we go ahead and do that, NASCAR is going to be in Bristol. We got the truck race set for Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so be aware of that. Friday night race. O'Reilly Series race is also going to be at night. That's going to be Saturday at 7:30 as well. All these times are Eastern, mind you. But the Cup race is going to be during the day. That's going to start at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the Food City 500. Then Supercars, as we talked about, they're in Topaz. They got 3 races this weekend as part of the Topaz 440. The first race is going to be at 8:55 p.m. Eastern Time Friday night, followed by the second race, which is going to be just a few hours after that at 12:05 Eastern Time Saturday morning, and then race 3 is going to take place at 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time Saturday night. Now, here's some of the grassroots races coming up. All of these are on Flow Racing, so if you're a subscriber to Flow Racing, you're going to want to... You got a lot of options here. So, Cars Tour, going to go to Nashville. They're going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern on Saturday on Flow. Cars Tour West, also, that broadcast starts at 6 p.m. Eastern on Flow. They're going to be in Tri-City. The Arco Menards West Series is going to be at Tucson. That race is scheduled to start, or go broad. The broadcast is scheduled to start at 9:45 Eastern on Flow, all p.m. Then you've got USAC Sprint Cars. They're going to be at Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Hey, couple of Indiana races for the USAC Sprint Car Series. They're going to start at Lawrenceburg on Saturday. That race is going to begin the broadcast at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Then on Sunday, the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour is at Thompson. That race goes live at 4:15 p.m. Eastern on Flow. And then on Sunday, probably, I assume, by the time the NASCAR race wraps up, flip on over to Flow because the USAC Sprint Car Series will be at the Terre Haute Action Track. That broadcast begins at 6:10 p.m. Eastern Time on Flow Racing. So that is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. I really appreciate everybody tuning in this week. We got a lot of races this week, and I'm looking forward to talking about all of them next week. And as always, make sure if you like this show, download the WTHR Plus app on your smart TV because you won't want to miss a single episode. So, for WTHR Plus, my name is Rob Peeters, and this has been The Racing Report.